This conference will now be.
Hello, folks. My name is Brian Weaver. I'm the VP of Sales with NSA. And today's webinar session in our professional services series number 54 is the Info OS Portal and how it differentiates from Mingle, which of course will be replaced in the next few months. It's my pleasure to introduce Brian Jones, our VP of Technical Services, who's going to be taking us through the webinar today. I would ask that if you do have questions, that you please enter it into the chat box. We will have pauses during the presentation for Q&A. And I would ask that you please mute all your lines. We're going to have a large number on today's session, and that'll keep the level down. And we will be sending out the recorded session to everybody within 48 hours of today's webinar. And with that, Brian, why don't you take it away, my friend?
All right. As Brian said, I am, and you get your record button pushed, Brian, you do. As Brian said, I'm Brian Jones, Vice President of Technology here at NSA. I get to play with a lot of toys and discover a lot of these things. Um, Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Infor OS portal. We'll compare it to or contrast it to Mingle, which is the current portal that you're used to. Um, we'll talk about actions that you should be doing or you should be uh, paying attention to. Um, we'll then have a demonstration of the portal, and again, I'll compare and contrast the differences. Um, During that demonstration, I'm going to pause for questions and answer sessions. So again, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat. Um, we've got a very large group on the call, and it's difficult to for everybody to be talking at once. So please put the questions in the chat. Like I said, I'll pause throughout the demo section, and I'll pause after I do my little PowerPoint spiel here um, for some again general high level questions. But hopefully the demo will answer most of the things that you have. Okay, so with that, getting started here, why do we care about this? Why are we here talking today? Well, Infor released a new version of their portal interface. It was really released in June of 2023, and they're making it mandatory effective April 30th of 2024. So if you don't do anything, what you're going to find is going to happen is all of a sudden your interface is going to change, and you'd rather be prepared for that than just let it happen. Now, I'm not exactly sure how Infor is going to change things. My guess is they're going to just do a migration and turn it on. But again, you can do all of those steps ahead of time, so it's not a surprise. But everybody should have received this notice from Infor. It came out about a month ago, telling that Infor OS is replacing, or Infor OS Portal is replacing Infor Mingle. Okay, so what is Infor OS Portal? Well, Infor OS Portal, again, is the interface that gets us to the Infor applications and combines the Infor ecosystem together into the thing called CloudSuite. Um, the Infor OS Portal is a multi-tenant portal. It's not available on premise. Okay, so anything I'm going to show you with the new portal, you cannot do on premise. The on-premise portal, there's another thing going on with that. The on-premise Infor OS, they're depreciating at the end of 2024. Okay, so there will be another replacement on-premise thing for that going out for a few more years, but really Infor's push is to get people to the cloud. Mingle is being retired. The thing that Infor thought would be cool 5 years ago, where you have like a Facebook type interface and you can chat back and forth and all of that inside of Infor OS, that's gone. the social functions are gone. You know, in today's world, that's essentially replaced by Microsoft Teams and other applications like that. So there's really no need for that in the portal itself. Um, Portal has the same core functionality though. You know, it's a thing that you log into that controls the security and gets you into your Infor applications. Um, it is a new system. It's not it's not they just band-aided what they had. They actually created a new system. So there's an actual migration to this system. It's you move your data from old Mingle to new Infor Portal, and I'll talk about and show that when I go into the demonstration.
Go to the
Um,
top here, Johnny. That section.
and Brian, can you mute people or make sure people are muted? Um, there's a revamp of the home pages. Home pages as they were don't quite exist the same way. They're now called Workspaces. And Infor has done a good job of creating probably 15 to 20 kind of standard workspaces. Um, and we'll see some of that. What we're also finding is not a lot of customers are using the home pages probably like they should, and Infor's hoping again for more adaptability of these workspaces. The actual migration of moving to Infor OS Portal is easy if you're not doing a lot of, again, homepage work and widgets and things like that. It gets a little more complicated there. So we'll see some of that when I talk about the migration. And the Infor OS portal also includes a new application called the Infor OS App Designer that lets you create your own custom widgets. With Mingle, creating a widget wasn't really an easy thing. You had to get it approved by Infor, and there was a whole bunch of stuff you had to do to make sure it was safe. Um, that that is kind of handled by the app designer. You can now do API calls and display information and things like that that you couldn't easily do in the previous version. So that's something that's just included. Some of the improvements. Um, it's a tabbed browsing experience, and you'll see that when I show you some of the screenshots here, and then when I go into it, instead of having to open additional browsers, things can stay in one browser, and it's quicker. It simply is quicker. Workspaces, as I said, replace home pages. Bookmarks are greatly improved. You can bookmark just about any place in the system and quickly jump to it. Um, Infor OS applications are consolidated. So instead of taking up a lot of space in the app switcher or the nine bar or the waffle menu, some call it, they're moved out to their own thing. And then the smart panel has been created, which is essentially a replacement for how the context apps work. And there are some cool things you can do with that. So with that said, let's look at some of the um, the changes here. I've got a few more slides. Then I'll pause for some questions. Again, make sure you put your questions in the chat. Brian will read them out to me, and I'll answer. And then we'll go into an actual live demo. So I've got a few more slides here. So home pages to workspaces. So this screen shows your traditional Mingle home page where you've got, again, your app switcher. That's what the official name of this is called, but some call it the waffle menu or the nine bar. And you've got your applications in here, and you could have pages and pages and pages of applications. Difficult to find an application on page 4 because you got to zoom around or zoom back and forth. That's changed. And then you've got your home pages, and my example here has multiple home pages on it, so I can move between things. The new look and feel is this. So instead of my app switcher opening up my applications, it opens up workspaces, bookmarks, and applications all in one handy area. And I can control things such as the order of these, how many of these display, and things like that. I also have, I mentioned the tabbed browsing. So I can set my commonly used applications and I can pin them to the Infor OS portal. So when I log in, I get my stuff always ready to go. I don't have to go dig through the application chooser, open it up, and get ready to go. I've got it all set. And you'll see that again in the live demo. So a couple little notes about that. The tabs can be pinned, like I said, so that startup and default startups can be set like before. So what we find with a lot of customers is they'll pin CSD or CloudSuite distribution to the startup location in Mingle. So when you log in, it just flies into SX or CSD as it's called. It'll fly right into SX. You can still do that certainly with the Infor OS portal. So that's the same, or you can give users the option of doing it, and I'll show that. Permissions come into play again throughout the system too. So as I'm logging in here, and you'll see my demo, I have a lot of applications because I'm an administrator, and we have a lot of things that we play with on our system. But permissions come into play with everything that you see, so you can control from the widgets to the workspaces to the applications, who is allowed to even see the application, and then to a degree certain functions of those applications. Users certainly can be assigned to multiple workspaces, just like you could do multiple home pages. You can have multiple workspaces, and users can be assigned to mandatory workspaces. So if you always have a company page or company information that you want everybody to see, no matter what, you can force that to happen. And again, if users are given permission, they can design their own workspaces and add widgets to them and create their own, custom look and feel if you want to go there. A couple more slides here, then I'll pause for some questions. Bookmarks are greatly improved in the system. So bookmarks are again part of now the app switcher. We can create groupings of bookmarks, and you could do that in the old system, but it was a little clunky. And again, I can rearrange the order, and they're just right here. And I can actually pin a bookmark to a starting spot. Consolidation of the Infor OS apps. I mentioned in the app switcher applications like Ion API, Data Fabric, Ion Desk. Those are Infor OS applications. And if you were to look in your app switcher, that takes up a lot of space in this case, I've got 4 different screens of things. Well, what they've done in the new interface, I've simply got an OS application, and in the OS application, I now have my data fabric, I now have my Ion Desk, I now have my API gateway. All of those pieces and parts are more logical, instead of being its own application. Context apps. Context apps are greatly improved. So again, this is the old look and feel. So again, inside of CSD, you've got your context apps on the right side, and I can't resize these. I can't separate them. I can't group them. It is kind of what it is, and sometimes it's tough to read the stuff inside of there. What they've done in the new version is they've created what's called a smart panel. That smart panel, and I'll show you this when I go into the demo, can be separated. So I can pop this out, put it on a different screen. I can group it. So I've got the ability to create groupings of things in here. So, maybe you've got common things that you want to appear, and stuff that maybe is secondary. You can create drop downs and groups, and then there's more things that you can do with that. And I should probably go to this slide. This talks about it. Pops out. Coleman is an application now directly off of the context app. We'll see that. Messages, all my alerts, my tasks, things like that were traditional Mingle things. Again, the whole Mingle thing is kind of gone with the social piece of it. But my alerts and my tasks and that kind of stuff, those messages are still there. They're right available in the Smart panel. And then we've also got Smart Help. So Smart Help is no longer a context app on its own. It's part of the Smart panel, and it varies based on the application that you're running. If it's CSD or ISM or whatever it may be, the Smart Help corresponds to the application. And then finally, the Infor OS Designer is the new little tool. They put this in here about July, August of this last year. It allows you to create little widgets that can go do API calls and get information from your applications on the system and display it. So these can be little widgets that you can create. Yes, it takes a little playing with, a little work to make it happen, but the idea is that it's no coding or very low coding to make this happen. And I've got a little sample widget that I've created out here, but we won't go deeply into the app designer. And with that, let me pause for a second. And Brian, do we have any questions that you want me to
Hey,
answer?
Brian. Yeah, we do have a couple questions. So thank you, Tom, for this one. I hope you're going to cover the notes widgets. Where did it go and how do I get it back?
Oh, it's there. It's there. I'll show you the notes widget. It's there.
Okay, great. And then another question here from Steve. What changes need to be made on our end, if any? And will this update be seamless or will there instructions have to be followed internally?
Um, It depends on how deeply you use, like I said, InforOS or the portal today. If your users just log in and you have the top left corner set to go into CSD, you really don't have to do anything. It'll convert, and that's how it'll be. Um, if you want to get people used to, and again, I'll show you a bit in the demo here. If you want to get people used to it ahead of time, you're able to do that. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about now. Some of the action items.
Okay, just a couple more here from Wakaria. How many active workspaces per tenant?
You can actually control the number of workspaces. I'll show you that in the configuration. The maximum, I believe, is 20.
Okay. And can I move users to Infor OS by groups or move all to PRD simultaneously?
Yes, you can control. So and that brings. I'll answer that in a second when I talk about this slide.
Okay,
Anything
great.
else?
That's all we got for now, Brian.
Okay. So all great questions, and the answers are coming. So right now, your Infor OS portal is going to be in what's called trial mode. Okay, Infor at the beginning of June, or was it the end of June? In June sometime, what they did is they ran a migration from your Mingle portal and created an Infor OS portal for you. Okay, um, that exists right now today. To get to it, and I'll show you an example on another slide, and we'll see it in my demo here, you simply add /v2 before your tenant name in the URL in your web page. Again, I'll show you that real time here, but that's how you get to it. Now, in order for users, though, to be able to see anything in it, they have to be one of these 4 security roles. Administrators can see it. So if you're system administrator and if you're Mingle administrator, you can access the trial mode portal. The other new security roles are portal user and portal content administrator. So the question there was, can I move or can I have people use it in groups? Yes, what you would do is you would give those users, if they're just to be a user, administrators can change workspaces and all of that kind of stuff, which you don't want to give that to everybody. But portal users are your typical user. So if you assign the portal user role to users, those ones can now access the portal tenant. If If they don't have any of these roles, they cannot access the tenant. They'll get some sort of access denied message, or it'll be blank. I can't remember what it looks like. But these are the security roles. There is a migration utility, and I'll show you that when I go into the admin here of it. But like I said, there is a migration utility that takes user settings from Mingle and moves them over to the Infor OS portal. So your favorites, your bookmarks, all of that kind of stuff that you set up in Mingle, they move over to the portal using that migration utility. So what you set up, so if you did a migration, or Infor did your migration, again, like I said, they automatically did it back in June. If you haven't run it since then, but users have added additional bookmarks and things like that, those won't magically be in the portal until you run another migration. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit when I show you the screens. There's a knowledge base article that talks about all this stuff. KB 2277419 talks about these permissions and the migration utility, and it's got some attached documents with instructions and things like that for again those that want to read more stuff. And then certainly there's an admin and a user guide, and they can be helpful. Helps you get into the details of some of the screens and things like that. But those are on docs.infor.com, or Google Infor OS Portal, and it'll bring you to there's two docs for that. All right. So continuing this, again, to try it out, you change your URL to, it's going to be mingle-portal.infor-cloudsuite.com, or there's a CA one if you're a Canada customer. Put V2 in front of your tenant name with slashes in between it. That's going to bring you to the Infor OS portal. Again, I'll show you this live here in just a second. Unless Infor changes their mind or changes something, April 30th is the drop dead date where these will automatically be migrated, and you will all of a sudden be in the portal. Okay. Resources, again, additional resources to find. There are some videos on campus on this. There's Infor support, and there are some YouTube videos on this, and there's certainly NSA. And if anybody wants any personalized, hey, let's walk through this together, certainly reach out to us and we can help. One thing I should mention is that if you wish to finalize this, so say you get into the portal, it all looks cool, great, you don't want to have to deal with April 30th and you're done. You can create a support ticket with Infor and tell them to finalize your portal. You can tell them to finalize your portal. And what they will do is that V2 then goes away, and when you log in to CloudSuite, just cloudsuite.com with your tenant, you automatically get the new Infor OS portal, and Mingle from that point forward is gone. And anybody that buys or is a newer customer to Infor within the last 6 months or so, you actually don't even get Mingle. You get the new stuff we're going to see here. So those are my action items. Brian, let's take some more questions here. Then I'll go into real live demo, and again that'll generate more questions. So
Sounds good, Brian. So we have a question from Stacy. If you start developing in V2, will those workspaces and widgets stay when the migration happens?
you have the option of overwriting them or not. You'll see that when I go to the migration screen. So that is a danger point here. If you don't choose the don't overwrite thing, yes, you risk overwriting what you've done in the portal by running migrations again and again and again. But you'll see that when I go to that screen. Okay, Brian? Brian, are you there?
Sorry, I don't know. I had a little issue there. Oh, sorry, I'm back. A couple other questions. So Rise Miller asks, user management seems to be gone in the new version. How do we set up new users?
It's not. I will show you that. I'll show you where it is.
Okay, and Steve asked a question here. We just went live on CSD, cannot access CSD in V2 trial mode. All the rest of the portal works, but not PRD CSD. Is there something else we need to do to activate this trial?
That could be a provisioning thing from Infor. Um, it that might be worthy of creating a concierge or an Infor support ticket on. Again, they are different. They are different things. So if Infor didn't move it, um, it might not be there. But what you can certainly try, and if you haven't run a migration, run the migration, because applications that are set up in Mingle aren't automatically brought over to the portal without being migrated. So, and I'll show you again how to run a migration here in a second. So that might be
Okay,
the
here's the
first step.
last question.
Yep, go ahead.
Yep, last question we got, Brian. Do you know how many customers have had their conversions finalized?
We've had several of them that we've been working with. We've had it done too. Um, And a recommendation would be if you're not like super close to going live on CSD, if you're like still in the process and stuff, and you're starting out in Mingle, don't do that. Start working towards the portal so your people learn the portal and the new method. Don't teach them the old stuff just to have it wipe out in 3 or 4 months. There have been several that we've dealt with that have gone to the portal, and also like I said, anybody who's bought CloudSuite in the last 6 months or so, they don't get the old stuff. They're into the portal.
Okay, great. That's all the questions we have for now.
Okay, so with that said, let me get out of PowerPoint here and let's go into a demonstration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out in traditional Mingle. I'm going to our CloudSuite tenant. Um, One of the things that you guys should all consider if you haven't done is you should use some sort of identity provider to get yourself into Infor OS and get yourself into CloudSuite. In my case here, we're integrated with Azure AD, so I've got one Brian. I log into my PC, I log into my Office 365. It's multi-factor authenticated, all of that kind of stuff, and it goes through Azure AD, and it's all controlled in Azure AD. Cloud Identities is the default Infor directory service, and that's okay too. But again, it's more fun to have single sign-on and all of that kind of stuff. It's easy. Believe me, it's easier on your users. So I'm going to log in using my Azure AD, and again, it prompts me for my account. If my browser's been logged in new enough, it doesn't force me to multi-factor because I've already been logged in and out several times today. But if it's been too long, it will certainly make my authenticator app beep, and I'll have to push a key and things like that. So anyway, this is what you're used to. So if I click on the app switcher, I go and I see my applications. Like I said, if CloudSuite distribution were in the top left here, when I logged in, I'd automatically go into CloudSuite distribution. Um, Also, you see the InforOS applications here, Ion, Fabric, API, that kind of stuff. Um, Admin stuff, again, in the traditional old way of doing it, that's under your username. So one of the questions was where did that go? You'll see in just a second. But admin settings, user management, if I'm an administrator, which I am to my portal here, I see admin settings, user management, and it's under my user, which you think that through, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So again, they've fixed that. Um, Shortcuts are over here to the right, not real friendly. They've fixed that. Um, applications um, applications are singular. What I mean by that is if I fire up my Cloud Suite here or my CSD here, um, pops up my CSD. That's great. But if I want to go to document management, I can, that's great. But if I got to go back, oh, well, now I got to go find it. Say if that was on page 2 or 3, I still got to find it. There it is. That's okay, but it's kind of clumsy in migrating or I'm sorry, moving around. If I want to do multiple windows, I can certainly do that by going to a different, browser tab. Maybe have a different browser here. So I've got, I've got CSD over here and maybe IDM over here. That's fine. But again, not real slick. And what happens, what you tend to do if you break it off into different browser windows is you forget which one's running your CSD. So you go try and start CSD on this one, it'll make you log out of that one and causes all sorts of issues. So the answer to this is, well, let's look at the V2 portal. So to make this a V2 portal, I simply go up to the address bar and I type V2 before again, my tenant here is NSA ComDem. So I hit return and it's going to go into the V2 portal. Now, I happened to do that on the screen where I was already in CSD, so it brought me to CSD. But the V2 portal here, I have my pinned tabs along the top. So if I select one, I have the ability to bookmark it, unpin it, or set it as the home. So this screen right here, this workspace this is a workspace. This workspace that you're seeing is my home workspace. I'm a techie geek, so I see the techie geeky stuff with the system versus the application-y stuff. But I can then set any of these tabs. Again, you saw CloudSuite distribution. If I wanted that to be my home application, I would set it as home, and it would that's the one it goes into when I log into the system. And again, we can set that, I'll show you in a second. We can set that globally so that users automatically are put into CSD. But again, then I've got my my different applications that I've got pinned along the top. If I click on my app switcher or waffle menu, 9-bar, whatever you call it, if I click on that, it's significantly different than it is in the old way. Here I've got workspaces, bookmarks, and applications. And I can control how many show on the screen. I can control the order of these. So it's a simple drag and drop of moving those around. And I can control the order of these. So if I want my applications up top, I click on the little gear button here, and I can move my applications. I can move my applications to the top. I can also control the number of items that display in this menu before that see more button. So in my case, I've got it set to 4. So I see 4 things. And again, you typically have your 4 most common things that you do. And if I click see more, well, holy cow, I see all of my applications and things like that I have access to. Now, again, this is controlled by permissions on the application itself as well as to whether or not you even see these things. But you don't want to be scrolling, so you set it to a logical number. Then when I open something up, like again, say I go to Infor OS, it goes up in the top, and I can quickly flip. Between between these applications, and there's again my workspace. So let's go to the Infor OS one. This is where a lot, or the OS, I should call it the OS application. This is where a lot of the settings have migrated to. And we'll talk about this, and then I'll take a second for some more questions if there are some. So if I go to the OS tab, and again, I can get to that by, again, I've got it pinned. I happen to have it pinned. If I want to unpin it, I can unpin it. The OS application has all of these sub applications that were, again, if you remember in the old method, they were these icons, and they were these silly admin settings and user management. User management is now right here. It's called security. It's under OS, it's called security, and this is going to bring up, again, you got to fire up the application, it's going to bring up the user management. The applications, the underlying applications, CSD, ISM, document management, data fabric, those haven't changed. Those update with the, the biannual and the monthly updates, that kind of stuff. The applications are the same. So this user setup is the same application that is in here in the old, in the old system for user management. It's the same thing. Um, it's just now under the OS instead of being under my username. Portal. Portal is where the applications get set up. So these are all the applications that are available in my Infor OS portal. And again, everything has a layer of security to it. So if I drill into something, let's go into CloudSuite distribution, I can control permissions on who has access to this application. Again, this probably isn't a good one because you don't typically want to mess with system type permissions. But let me go back, home, portal, applications, get back out of there. So these are my applications. And let me do a few more, then I'll take some questions here. So under portal, these are where the global, think of it as the global portal settings are kept. Okay, each user also has personal settings up underneath their user name and icon, where I can set, my colors, my personal little preferences. Again, I kind of compare this to, hey, you're moving from like Windows 7 to Windows 10. The stuff is all kind of still there. It's just in a little bit of a different place. So again, I've got applications, widgets. These are the widgets that are either provided by Infor, and Infor, if I go to standard widgets, these are all of the Infor standard provided widgets. And again, everything has, like I said, everything has a security layer to it. So activities, for example, if I go to activities, permissions, edit permissions, I can see which role has permission to this widget. At default, usually it's everyone can see stuff. Yeah, most of the time. So again, permissions can be set on widgets, workspaces, applications, all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of times setting the permissions and messing with permissions are probably the most complex part of the system, because you can get pretty deep in how the groups and the roles and all of that stuff go. But each thing has its own permission setting. So I've got standard widgets. Standard widgets are the Infor provided ones. Then I've got published widgets. These are the ones that NSA has done, or maybe I've taken something and copied it and put it out here. These are the NSA ones. And again, there's varying levels of widgets. Workspaces, same game there. Infor has standard workspaces. And if you haven't looked at these, there are some pretty cool ones. Some of the new ones, like I said, the system administrator one is cool. There's let me go out here to, I've got a user one, which is this is a copy of the baseline one, where I've kind of added my own widget to it, and things like that. So let me go back to my OS again. Click back on OS. It goes right back where I left off. So standard widgets are Infor provided ones. Published, or I'm sorry, standard workspaces. Now I'm getting my terms confused. Published workspaces are the ones that we've taken and modified. You cannot directly modify the Infor provided workspaces, but what you end up doing is you end up taking a copy of it, you modify it, make it your own, or corporate your own, and then it becomes a published workspace that you can then provide out to your users based on permissions or based on groups or whatever. There's also this thing, it gets pretty complex, called a dynamic workspace, where you've got widgets on the screen that vary by groups and user permissions and things like that. So if you wanted to have literally a single workspace that has a bunch of stuff on it, but the stuff changes based on permissions, that's what a dynamic workspace lets you do. And I'm going to skip settings for a second, talk about announcements, and then I'll pause and answer questions. Announcements. Announcements allow me to create system-wide announcements or group-specific announcements. So if you notice on my user workspace here, I've got an announcement. Actually, I've got three of them, three different announcements. It could be something like a Merry Christmas. It could be a company policy update. It could be a link to something else. John Kachuba from NSA here has created some in our tenant here, and that's what we're seeing. Those are controlled under announcements, and you can set start dates, expiration dates. They can be links. They can be assigned to groups of people or groups of users. That's the permissions tab. And that's what actually security policies control who gets the announcement. So again, there's another layer of security there under security policies that control announcements. And with that said, let me pause here for some questions, Brian, before I go into settings and migration, and then we'll go into the context and the smart panel.
That sounds good, Brian. We do have a few. So one question from Matt, is there a way to determine if users have created bookmarks without asking them?
No. So users have kind of what I would call kind of their own personal space. You'd have to somehow log in as that user. There is no way that I've seen where you can pre-populate bookmarks for users. And I could be wrong on this. Pre-populate bookmarks on users or set things like the order here for users for them, all of that stuff ahead of time. You can control what applications they get, but you can't necessarily control their bookmarks and their application ordering.
Okay, and then Norm has a question. Can you please show a screenshot of the security setup for a portal user?
Can I show a screenshot of a security setup for a portal user? Sure. So if I were to go into this, I'm going back into my traditional system. If I were to go to, let's go to myself, Brian Jones. I'm going to go find myself. I'm going to go to security roles. Now, if you remember from my slide presentation, there are really two roles that determine a portal user, aside from Mingle administrator and system administrator. So there are two roles. So if I look at myself here, I will have a role, if I gave it to myself, called portal. There's portal user and portal content administrator. So I gave myself portal content administrator, means I'm a portal administrator. The other role, if I don't want to make them an administrator, I could go to a plus here. In my search, I could type in the word portal, and it's called portal user is the one you want to use. If I check that for a normal user, they would then be able to log into the V2 portal. If I don't have that, checked or any of the portal users checked, you can't get there. Next question, Brad.
Okay, yeah, we got a couple here from Stacy. Did they take away the sales manager workspace?
Did they take away the sales manager workspace? I don't know. Standard. Let's go look standard. I do not see a sales manager workspace. Do you? They may have named it something else, but I don't see a sales manager workspace. Maybe. I don't see it.
Okay. Is there documentation for V2? These features are great, but I hope the webinar isn't the only way to learn about or play with those features.
Yeah, again, from the presentation, there's a knowledge base that has some documents in it. There are also the two documents. There's a user guide for it, and there is an administration guide. Again, it's called Infor OS Portal is what you want to search for on the doc site. And it is there in the new. It's current, so there's information. So it does explain some of the details about things. Doc site is at docs.infor.com. So let's do a quick there. If I go to docs.infor.com, if I go to technology platform, and if I go to Infor OS, here's where the docs are. Now I always have to drill around in these to find the exact location of it, but each of these has groupings of documentation. The other way to do this is, again, the lazy way, Infor OS Portal. Oh, look at that. Infor OS Portal user guide is the first one that came up. So that would bring me right to the Infor OS Portal user guide. And again, you can save these as PDFs if you want to save them and read them offline. You can certainly do that too. Right?
Great. Some good questions there. That's all we have for now, Brian.
Okay. So yes, the guides are for V2. As long as you're looking at the current, yes, the guides are for V2. So what I want to do is I want to talk a bit about admin migration, and then we'll go into the smart panel. So if I go back to my OS, and if I go back to settings, general settings, these are the global settings for your InforOS portal. So whatever you change in here and set in here takes effect for everybody. And I'm not going to walk through every field here, but some of the interesting ones that people are interested in are certainly home selection. Yes, there is a dark mode. Certainly home selection. So I can go choose if I want CloudSuite distribution to be my default home application, which I've got it set for. I choose application, I choose CloudSuite distribution, and I leave it at that. If I have this checkbox underneath it checked, which I do in my environment, that allows me, the user, to choose a different one. Otherwise, what it would say is CloudSuite distribution is the home application, and it wouldn't let me change it. Okay. But in my case, because I like other stuff, I've got this one as the home application. So that's how you choose what your default home application, and you've got some choices there. You can also control things such as look and feel, your icons, your number of tabs. That's where the maximum number of workspaces comes from, the maximum number of tabs. Keep in mind, the more stuff you've got open, the more memory it takes in your browser and things like that. So you need more horsepower to do it. But you can choose your default colors. You can choose as to whether or not you allow users to pick workspaces or which workspaces they can pick. You can also force default workspaces. So the first time they log in, they're going to get this workspace. That's the default workspace. And then you can also set mandatory workspaces. And with any of these, you can set exceptions. So exceptions allow you to get creative with groups and permissions and say that, okay, these users get this, other users get that. That's what that does. So in my case, I've got my mandatory workspace set for NSA professional services. So this workspace is always going to show up for anybody at NSA that logs in. Now, it's not necessarily in this order. I can still move the order around, but it's always going to be there because I'm forcing it through the setup page. Let's see. Anything else of interest there? Again, that's a you play with this, when you're in your test mode to see what it does and what it doesn't. But these are settings for everybody in the system. Settings for individuals are under the username. So user settings under Brian. These are my settings. I've got my photo, I've got stuff. Somebody asked about the themes. Here are the themes. They moved these over here, so I've got high contrast, dark and light. And I can have a different accent color than what the system accent color is. If I didn't like if I didn't like whatever was assigned, I could change it for myself. Again, and these are personalizations that are just specific to my user. So various little things. Typically, these aren't deep as far as affecting things; they're more cosmetic, but that's under your user settings. All right, last piece here on the OS admin is the migration. As I said, if you go in, you're only going to see this migration if you're in trial mode. If your portal's been finalized, you will not have this option. Okay, so migration, if I click a start here, it gives me the ability to choose what to migrate. And there's one slider here that's important. And someone asked the question of, gee, does it overwrite things? Yes, it can if I leave this slider on. If I turn the slider off, it's only going to bring in changes or things that don't exist already in my Infor OS portal. So you've got to be careful if you, as you're running this, again, get things bookmarks, home pages, user settings, again, my user personalizations, things like that. That all comes through the migration. Applications also come through the migration. So someone asked, hey, CSD doesn't exist in my InforOS portal. Probably the first thing I would do is I would go run a migration again and make sure I've got applications selected. That might just fix your problem. And you can also do a test run here. If I do test run and do a start, it's going to go do a migration, but it won't actually do it. It's just going to show me in the log here what's going on. Do a refresh. So it tells me what it does. So then I can determine. I would go then do it for real, and it would go then do the migration. So one of the recommendations I would have is if you really haven't done anything in Infor OS Portal yet and want to go in there, the very first thing you should do before you let users in there or do anything is go and run a migration again. Just run it with the default settings, leave it alone, click start. That will at least take your Mingle portal as it is today and move all your user settings and things like that into the InforOS portal. Now, again, users can't necessarily log in there yet without being assigned the appropriate permissions. All right, we're running a little low on time, so I want to get into the smart panel. Then I'll take a final round of questions here. So if I go into my CSD app, I'm going to just log in. I have on the right side here, it looks a little different, but I have my, oops, I didn't mean to click on Coleman. I have my context apps. And these are widgets. Nowadays, these are widgets. And I can scroll through here. Administrators can control what shows up here. So they control the order and they control that stuff. But I've got my context apps. So some things that are cool about this is I can resize this. You can't do this in the old version. I can resize these so I can see them all. I can also click this button and I can separate it from my main window. So, this is handy if you use the document management, or if you've got multiple monitors and want to have something on one monitor and not on the other. You get your real estate back in the application and put it back. I just click the X, it goes right back. I also have the ability to set groups here. So again, I might have my most common stuff in the first screen here. Then I've got, maybe I've got CSD cool stuff. We've got a little chat GPT client here for it. And we've got some context viewers and maybe some geeky stuff that you don't, you don't commonly use. So you could set different categorizations of things, which I think is a very cool thing. And again, keep in mind each of these context apps, or I should say widgets, they're controlled on the widget screen that we saw in the InforOS area, is permission based. So if the user Brian doesn't have permission to this context app, it won't be here. So then a couple other things in this, again, this is called the smart panel now. A couple things in here. Again, we have Coleman. Coleman is Infor's, think of it as their little chat bot. I can ask it questions. There is some setup that has to be done in Infor OS. And again, if I were to, again, clicky quick to Infor OS, go to home, that is the digital assistant. That's where the setup is done for that, but that's Coleman. There are my alerts and notifications. They're in my little inbox here. Those all show there. And then there is also my Smart Help. Smart Help is the little help icon now. It used to be its own context app. It's not anymore. It's the little question mark here, and it's context sensitive to where I am in my application. Again, if it's CSD, if it's ISM, if it's whatever, as long as Infor has developed help for that, it's going to show up here. Brian, questions?
Yeah, so we've got just a few more here. Is there a way to create groups and then create dashboards for each group, like your nerdy one there? Then set it up as kind of like a landing page for users based on their group. So it's
Yes.
like they're looking to set up groups for other users.
Yes. Yeah, you could create groups and roles and all of that kind of stuff. That is all done in the security. So if I go to the hamburger menu, we use all these technical terms, the hamburger menu here, I can create groups of users, I can create roles, all that kind of stuff in here. I can assign users to those roles. Those roles can then be passed down through security to others. So
Okay,
yes,
great.
you can create layers of security, which is why I said security can be one of the most complex things.
Okay.
Okay.
You answered part of this question, but it goes a little bit deeper. So our workspaces user specific, you'd mentioned that they were, but buyers like for purchasing as an example, to be able to see the results for their products and vendors that they manage, same for CSRs, AP, AR, et cetera, or do all, let's say, people in purchasing see the same workspace?
That depends on how the widget is configured. Often if you go to, let's see if I have, oops, I'm sorry, applications. Messed up my screen here. Let me go to let's go to a buyer's workspace. You often have, and that's not a custom one, so let's go to my buyer's workspace copy, which is a custom one. You often have customization or setups on some of these widgets. If you're not aware, sometimes you got to click the pencil to do it, and you got to be an administrator and all of that stuff. But some of the widgets have configurations to them. So I'm not exactly sure of the answer to that question for the buyer's one, but but take a look at the widget itself and look for little settings, these little three dots off to it, and maybe you set it to a user, maybe you set it to something like that. I'm guessing there is, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Next.
Here's one more question, and the answer to this might be scheduling a one-on-one. This is from Steve. For context, he's the system admin and developer. He's definitely excited to play with the V2 stuff, but no idea where to start in terms of setting this up and organizing it. How do you recommend I start my journey knowing I don't have any technical limitations? Looks like he's a super user, super admin.
The way I play with it is okay. I create myself a user of myself that's not an admin. Um, so create just what would be just a regular user, and then you've got your admin user. So go and start setting things as the admin user, giving permissions to your regular user, log in a different browser into your regular user, and see what you see. You've got to kind of you know play with it a bit. Again, most companies are going to start simple and just say, okay, I need to get into CSD. So they're just going to put CSD as their default app and sometimes not care about other things. But but start with, again, I would recommend you take a look at these and get under portal. Take a look at these workspaces. Those are cool things. Um, and again, set a user that's a regular user and use an admin user to change settings, and then go see go see what effect you have, log in, log out, and see how it goes. So.
Okay, great. I know that we're kind of out of time. I would ask that anybody that's got other questions or would like assistance, certainly can reach out to Brian. And Brian, if you don't mind pulling up your contact info. And I'd like to take this opportunity, Brian, to also thank you for a very great webinar. We're getting lots of really good comments about the content for this as well.
Yeah, and again, brian.jones@nsacom.com is me directly. And again, if you've got more of a support type question that you want to send to our support group, support@nsacom.com, that'll ultimately probably get back to me too. But again, if you do have just follow-on questions that I didn't get to your question here, please send me an email and I'll reply to you. And we'll see if we can get you a quick answer. So
Great. Well, thanks to everybody for attending, and that's a wrap for today's session.
thank you, everyone.